Yeah, I'll react to that, sure.
Hi guys. Preemptive like. So this is a pretty fascinating subject, believe it or not, for me. Maybe fascinating is the wrong. I like talking about it, but it's not like I'm obsessed with it. And I've talked with a few people on Discord about it and how like usually main argument is how American infrastructure in cities has had to kind of work around and adapt and accommodate to the century old car centric infrastructure and that has led to let's go. It's led to not ideal situations for everyone, for all people within cities for sure, because there's less rail and public transportation. I don't know what I'm talking about. Let's go. Let's learn. My name's Connor. If you're new, hi. I like to learn and things. I got my new chair today. Put it together. So I got my new chair, my new computer, new desk. Well, I'm ADD. Let's go.
The United States and Europe both have large urban populations and deep cultural ties, but their respective cities have
True.
some distinct differences. For starters, there is a significant age gap between European and American cities. When Europeans first arrived in the Americas in the late 15th and early 16th centuries, there were as many as 10 million natives living in what is today the United States. But the natives were not concentrated in large urban settlements like the civilizations in what is today Mexico and Central and South America. If there had been, you can only speculate on what would have happened to them. There are some exceptions though. The oldest continuous settlements in the United States belong to natives and are located in the southwest United States.
Oh.
These settlements were founded around 1100 AD, but they generally have never hosted more than a few thousand people. The largest known native settlement in the United States hosted as many as 18,000 natives.
Mississippi.
This city, called Cahokia, was located in what is today the state of Illinois, and just minutes from the modern-day city of St. Louis.
Shoot. I thought it was going to be right.
But Cahokia was abandoned by the year 1350. The 10 largest cities in the United States, on average, were settled around the early to mid-18th century, while Europe's 10 largest cities are hundreds and sometimes thousands of years older. Europe's 10 largest cities by population are on average larger than American cities when counting the residents within city limits. Out of Europe's 10 largest cities by population, none have less than 2 million people.
Ooh, wait.
Around the early to mid-18th century. In the United States, on average, were settled around the early to mid-18th century, while Europe's 10 largest cities are hundreds and sometimes thousands of years older.
Well, obvious.
Europe's 10 largest cities by population are on average larger than American cities when counting the residents within city limits. Out of Europe's 10 largest cities by population, none have less than 2 million people. But in the United States, 6 of its top 10 have less than 2 million people.
Well, Europe has like twice the population as the US, doesn't it? So, like, Europe is much older. So, of course, their most populated cities are going to be older. Europe has twice as many people. Of course, they're going to have cities with more people. I'm going to keep it, but
European cities also have a higher population density. Out of Europe's 10 most populated cities, only 3 have a density of less than 10,000 people per square mile. St. Petersburg, Russia, Kiev, Ukraine, and Rome, Italy. The city with the highest density is Paris, with 53,000 people per square mile, nearly twice as many people as the United States' densest.
What?
3,000 people per square. The city with the highest density is Paris, with 53,000 people per square mile.
It's kind of hard for me to put my brain around that, but that sounds like a lot.
Nearly twice as many people as the United States' densest city, New York, with 28,000 people per square mile. After New York City, it drops off pretty quickly. The second most populated city in the U.S.,
LA?
Los Angeles, has 8,500 people per square mile.
And probably
Chicago,
like Houston.
12,000 people per square mile.
Oh.
Houston, 3,500 people per square mile. And Phoenix, 3,100 people per square mile. The differences in European and U.S. cities' populations and densities are largely due to American suburbs. People are living outside of city limits and in homes instead of multi-story structures. These suburbs initially came about because of the train. They then exploded with the wider use of the car and cheap fuel that powered them. Land outside of American cities was also cheap, making homes affordable for the middle class. Chicago is often credited with inventing the suburb. After the fire of 1874, the city banned the construction of wood buildings, so speculators built cheap wooden homes as fast as they could just outside of Chicago for the 100,000 people that were just left homeless. After World War II, the federal government started guaranteeing loans that required 20% or less for a down payment and loan lengths as long as 30 years. Before this, it was common to have to make a 50% down payment with loan lengths as short as 5 to 10 years. These new loans increased the amount of people that could purchase a home, but these loans had more favorable terms for new construction compared to existing housing since the government did not want to back a loan on a house that may have issues. This meant it was easier to get a new home in the suburbs than a property close to the city center, which was typically older. However, African Americans were often discriminated against when it came to these loans, so few were able to move to the suburbs. While mortgage discrimination has improved significantly, the discrimination that occurred from the 40s to the 60s contributed to generational poverty, and it has had a lasting impact on the geography of American cities. African Americans are still less likely to be living in the suburbs than whites, though the demographics are slowly changing. Today, more African Americans actually live in the suburbs at 39% than within city limits at 36%. The mass exodus in many of these cities, often referred to as white flight, led to severe urban decay. Residential buildings were abandoned, leading to local businesses shutting their doors due to less customers, which resulted in job losses, which led to poverty and crime, which led to more people leaving.
And the tax base goes, which leads to less funds for the city to upkeep the city, which makes it more unappealing to live there, which means more people leave, which then decreases the tax base again, and then cycle.
This cycle continues in many
If I'm saying anything that's wrong, please tell me.
cities today, which led to more people leaving. This cycle continues in many cities today, while others have seen an urban revival in the last couple of decades, as many young professionals move back to the city. However, where wealthier people in the United States tend to live in the suburbs, in Europe, wealthier individuals are more likely to live in the city center. Take a look at this map of the London Underground, which shows the average income of the neighborhoods that use each stop. The highest incomes are at the center.
That's a ton. Oh, okay. It does drop down. I thought for a second the entire map was just everyone who made 150K pounds plus. But you do have, 55, 53. But wow, that must be okay.
Center of the city, and the lowest incomes are at the farthest stops from the center.
Right.
Speaking of public transportation, Europe's public transportation systems are usually thought of as superior to the United States, with a few exceptions like New York City. Because of the suburbs, U.S. cities are too spread out, and buses and trains can't stop at every block to pick everyone up. If they did, it would run extremely slow. When it comes to roads, both the United States and Europe have extensive major road networks. But in the United States, large roads often run right through its cities instead of up to it. While this may make sense in trying to quickly travel from state to state or city to city, it is often criticized for splitting neighborhoods and disrupting local communities. Another thing that separates European and U.S. cities are the amount of skyscrapers. United States cities generally have more skyscrapers. Out of 50 cities in the world with the most skyscrapers, only 2 are in Europe: Moscow, Russia, with 57 skyscrapers, and Frankfurt, Germany, tied for 50th with 17. The United States has 11 cities in the top 50, with the most going to New York City with 287 skyscrapers. When European cities
What makes a skyscraper a skyscraper? Is it like a floor requirement?
do have skyscrapers, they have 87 skyscrapers. When European cities do have skyscrapers, they tend to have a section designated for them, away from their historic city center, like La Défense, a business district which is actually a few miles outside of Paris itself. The skyscraper was first born in the United States in the late 19th century. The first in
I just want to do
Chicago.
a recap so far, guy. Oh, classic poster. A recap. So I want to make sure I've the great video so far. A few minutes, a minute and a half left, but kind of make sure tell you guys what I think I've understood, so you can tell me if I've followed it or not. So a lot of the things he's talked about is how the first two things were obvious, simply because the United States and Europe are very similar in land size, but half the amount of people live in the U.S. as in Europe, so that's obviously going to mean people are going to be more spread out. And Jesus, I'm not editing. One of the things is that people are moving more to the suburbs, which, guys,
And
I'm
later.
pausing.